high at 8.25%. Economist Isaiah Mhlanga says that there's still hope for a repo rate cut later this year. Now, the president says his administration will place inclusive growth and job creation at the center of its work. He was delivering the opening of Parliament address in Cape Town last night. President Cyril Ramaphosa says his administration will intensify the investment drive and encourage business to invest in productive capacity to create jobs. All right, joining us this morning just to break this further is Martin Kingston, who's chair of Business for South Africa. Very good morning to you, Mr. Kingston. Thank you very much for your time today. Hit or miss for the president as far as focusing on the things that are pertinent for the business sector?
We would say, Tammy, that actually it was a very focused speech. And it concentrated on the key priorities that we've been discussing with government for the last 12 months and working with them very specifically in some partnership areas. So I would have to say that it was pragmatic, fiscally prudent, and as you said, absolutely emphatic about the need for inclusive economic growth if we're going to be able to address the issues, particularly of unemployment, but also obviously poverty and inequality.
He touched on a number of key issues. One of those, and the phrases that he used, is that he is going to turn, and they want to turn South Africa into a construction site for the next 5 years. Talk to us about the feasibility of that. It's not the first time that we've heard such rhetoric of stimulating the construction industry, stimulating infrastructure development in the country.
Well, it's of course absolutely correct that infrastructure is an absolute fundamental in terms of creating the capacity within the country to drive that economic growth. And the three areas that we've been collaborating with the government in partnership between B4SA and the government over the past year, two of them have been, of course, energy and logistics, transport and logistics. And those, along with water and the rest of civil infrastructure, represent the vast majority of all infrastructure spend that's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years, particularly in energy, transport and logistics and water. And there we're seeing real progress, and the result of that has been, as we've seen for the last over 100 days, a reduction in load shedding. And we believe we're going to start to see us turning the corner in respect of transport and logistics as well. And that's by harnessing all of the resources of the country, in particular bringing the private sector's skills, capability and capital to bear. And there's no doubt that as we continue to make a significant contribution to GDP, to employment, and indeed to the payment of taxes and fixed capital formation, the private sector, in collaboration with government, can make a very significant difference. So yes, we acknowledge the need for infrastructure and therefore construction spend, but we need to have the right regulatory environment. We need to have decisive leadership. We need to have quick implementation, and we need to be very focused upon those key priorities, and not only that the president laid out, but that we have agreed with him and his executive under the 6th administration, and we hope to do so shortly in the context of the incoming administration, on what are the short-term wins, on being accountable for our performance as a partnership, as a country, and making sure that we deliver according to the expectations of the population at large.
There is Operation Vula, which sits within the presidency's office. Are you attributing the 100 days plus of no load shedding, the progress that we seem to be experiencing from Eskom, as well as the transformations that are taking place in Transnet, are you attributing that to Operation Vula, for example, and the cutting of red tape, including the stronger triple Ps?
Yeah, Tammy, so Operation Vulindlela, we've had 1.0. I think we'll be moving into an expanded form of Operation Vulindlela. as the President said, a partnership between the Presidency and National Treasury, focusing on structural reform, addressing constraints on the effectiveness of doing business, and actually the broader regulatory environment has been very successful. It's played a material role in addressing many of the issues that we've been talking about, including, of course, load shedding. I would say that the forebearer of that was, of course, the Energy Action Plan and the creation of the National Energy Crisis Committee, and business has played a very significant role in providing support, assistance, and working with government on the implementation of the Energy Action Plan. We know, as the President said yesterday, that he's going to expand the scope of Operation Vulindlela to other areas. And again, we're keen to see whether there's scope to harness the resources of business. And as I said, in that particular regard, that includes in particular skills and expertise to ensure that we can expand those areas into, for example, more significant challenges like the functioning of municipalities, the challenges that we have within water, and so on. So yes, there's no doubt that we can attribute significant success to Operation Vulindlela. There's more to be done. You mentioned red tape. We still believe that that needs to be accelerated, the removal of all restrictions. Indeed, the President directly referred to the need to simplify regulatory constraints on the investment environment, and we are absolutely supportive of working with him and his administration on that.
Talk to us about whether you believe there are sufficient measures that have been put in place to improve the functioning of our ports and the transportation system around the railway, because that is key to ensuring that business does thrive, that it is operational, and that we do once again regain our status as being one of the functional ports in the world, which we have lost in the recent past.
You're absolutely correct. So again, one of the key areas of focus has been transport and logistics, and at the heart of that lies the Freight Logistics Roadmap, which has been approved by government, again, in which we participated significantly. It has undermined the efficiency and indeed the viability of many businesses, large and small, the constraints that we have around both the railway network and indeed the port system, and the move to roads. And we all know what the ramification of that has been in the context of both the capability and capacity of the roads, let alone the degradation and the impact on the environment. So we have harnessed significant expertise. Once again, there's a National Logistics Crisis Committee that has been formed. The Transnet turnaround plan sits at the very heart of that. We meet literally on a daily and weekly basis with Transnet, with the Department of Transport, and indeed more broadly with the Presidency and government to see how we can work to deal with those issues. I think we need to manage expectations. Some of these challenges have arisen over an extended period of time. The lack of capacity, both human capacity, systems problems, maladministration, and indeed corruption, we know, has bedeviled many of these areas. But once again, we're beginning to see real progress, particularly in Transnet. We've got a new board. It's just celebrated 1 year in office. I think it's played a significant role. A newly appointed executive who we're fully committed to working with. And I think that if we're going to be relentless about our focus, as I said before, in a limited number of areas where we can move the needle and build confidence, then yes, we will see a turnaround in the ports, which have been languishing in terms of our competitiveness globally, and where we could and must do very much better.
The President also touched on the need and the vision to create a green manufacturing sector. One of the visions are to export green hydrogen to the rest of the continent. Talk to us about the feasibility of that, and whether this is just a pipe dream or something that is actually low-hanging fruit for us.
Yeah, no, it's not a pipe dream at all. We know that the just energy transition is absolutely crucial, not just for South Africa, of course, but for the world at large. Our ability to export our goods will be significantly impacted upon our ability to demonstrate our approach and our transition to a green economy. And there are many areas, including green hydrogen, for example, that he mentioned, where we can actually be highly competitive. Our abundance of solar and wind resources means that we should be able to convert that into economically viable projects, both domestically and indeed for opportunities for export, again, as he had identified last night. There's a huge amount in the pipeline. In fact, much of the load shedding reduction is attributable in part not only to operational improvements within Eskom, but also to a new pipeline of energy projects, mainly renewable energy projects that have come on stream, almost all driven by the private sector, and a very significant amount of additional projects in the pipeline. Now, the biggest problem, of course, is that there's a vast financing bill that is attached to all of this. Just the just energy transition has got some 1.3 to 1.5 trillion rand. If we've got the right regulatory environment, if we put in place the correct structures, and we certainly are beginning to see that emerge with many of the implementations that have taken place over the past year, yes, I think it can be a very significant spur to economic growth, Tammy.
All right, well, we thank you so much, Martin Kingston, for your time as well as your insight. It sounds like business is quite satisfied with what has come out of the opening of Parliament address, and also it's quite clear that the conversations that you've been having along with the President within that Operation Vulindlela, a lot has been coming out of that. We thank you for your time this morning. Thank you. That's Martin Kingston. He is CEO of Business for South Africa. So back to our viewers' question for today. We've heard the reaction from business, all the projects that the President highlighted yesterday, the plans that he has to stimulate the economy, to grow the infrastructure. He says that he wants to make South Africa a construction site. But we want to hear from you this morning. Are you satisfied with what the President has put forward? Did he hit all the right notes as far as you are concerned? Are there any areas that the President did not touch on last night that you believe are of paramount importance if we are to move together as a country and to build a strong, capable South Africa? You'll find us on all the various social media platforms. On X, we are at ENCA, or at the SA Morning, on Facebook at ENCA or the South African Morning, and you'll also find us on Instagram at ENCA News. Back with more of your day's leading stories, as well as continued reaction to the opening of Parliament address delivered last night by the President of the Republic of South Africa. We'll be right back.